Hey guys, MichaelBtheGameGenie here, and in today's episode we're going to talk about yesterday's Arcade 1Update show, and while a lot of people think there wasn't a lot of information given, there was actually a lot more alluded to than meets the eye, and I'll tell you more about it right after this. So that's right guys, today we're going to be taking a look at yesterday's Arcade 1Update show that showed up without any announcement or fanfare, much like it was cancelled in the first place. But before we get to that, I want to say thank you so much to everybody for checking out the video. Guys, I always appreciate your support, and if this is your first time to the channel, you like what you see, go ahead, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, all that YouTube stuff. So guys, yesterday, literally out of nowhere, the previously cancelled Arcade 1Update premiere episode showed up on YouTube featuring Travis MCP and DMac, better known as David MacIntosh from Arcade 1Up. And we finally got this show that they announced so many weeks ago on that 1Up show. And well, how do you describe the show?
Just talking? Well, what's the show about?
It's about nothing.
Of course, guys, I'm just having a little fun. I did receive some personal feedback, and I have seen some feedback online that they felt that the show didn't really deliver the answers they were looking for. They didn't really get out of it what they expected. However, I thought the show was really good. I thought David MacIntosh and Travis made a very good combination. I thought Travis was an excellent host. I mean, the guy has 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. You can certainly see why. I mean, his demeanor, his cadence, the way he asked questions was very professional, and something that was sorely lacking from some of the other Arcade 1Up produced shows they've put out in the recent past. So good job, Travis. And of course, David has always been an excellent advocate on behalf of the company. I mean, he's a PR guru, a marketing guru. He knows how to speak the speak. And some of my favorite interviews from Arcade 1Up over the years have featured David. I have fond memories of him showing up on the Retro Buzz, other podcasts, and the way he delivers the corporate speak is in a very good and genuine way. Anyways, guys, despite all that, I know that you think there wasn't a lot of information given, but there was a lot of things said that really leaves it up to interpretation, and we can take a lot of information from what they said and go in our own direction. So while there were no real official announcements and probably not a lot of information given that you guys were looking for, there was some interesting tidbits from this interview that I did want to touch on today in this reaction video and share with you. First up, we have to address the elephant in the room, and I guess they addressed the elephant in the room as well during the show. But while I said Travis was an excellent host and it was a very good show, there was one major problem. Poor Travis's mic never got picked up in StreamYard or whatever streaming service they were using to do this interview, so he was actually on the wrong mic and it affected his audio, while most people probably didn't even care. I know it probably drove him nuts looking back at it afterwards. He's sitting in front of him with a very expensive professional microphone, and unfortunately it was not detected, so we did not get the best audio from Travis. But that's not the real elephant in the room that I wanted to discuss right away, and I'm not going to belabor this, but they did talk about why the initial episode was canceled, and David did a very good job explaining that they had a scheduling conflict because a couple things were up in the air, and that's a good PR answer. But we all know the scheduling conflict and meeting and issues that they were having was related to this whole MK4 debacle, Anthony Vitale's video, John trolling on Twitter about MK4 being real, and an overreaction on somebody's part, and that's the real reason it was canceled. So yes, there was a meeting and a scheduling conflict because of another issue, but he can't outwardly directly say that. Then we're going to go on to the thing that I think most people were also very disappointed by, and that was the update on Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I think the big thing everybody was tuning in for the show was an update on Marvel vs. Capcom 2 online, which had been alluded to, and we were hoping that either Travis or David would provide us with some insight on when the titular title for this cabinet would be available to play through Wi-Fi. And while they did provide us with an update, it really wasn't much of one, and much of the same as what we've been receiving all along when it comes to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Unfortunately, it still isn't ready. We got a little bit of an explanation, sort of. People were saying that David took a very long time to answer things, and it's creatively dancing around it. But what happened was, Arcade 1Up is a hardware manufacturer, and they outsource their development. So sometimes they come up with ideas and thoughts on what they can do. However, the software development is much more complex than they initially believe. And unfortunately, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, getting Wi-Fi to work through their systems has been an absolute nightmare. And unfortunately, they still do not have an update, which I'm sure most people were pretty pissed off about. I mean, it's been 6 months. It feels like 6 months. I know it's only like we're in month 5 now, I think, waiting for the online update. But I mean, these Arcade 1Up cabs realistically have a year's life cycle before they start looking at doing a revision or something like that. So the fact that this has been on the market for 5 months, Wi-Fi is still not available, is a little bit mind-boggling, realistically. But we were hoping for an update. What we did get was kind of an update saying that the beta testing team, Travis is part of the beta testing team, and he indicated that they are playing on a pretty successful build at this point, and it looks like everything is working correctly for Marvel vs. Capcom 2 Online, and hopefully we'll get a further update on their next episode, which is going to be happening sometime in March, which we assume will initially happen and then be immediately canceled. So another big thing they addressed on the show that I thought was rather interesting was, in fact, the inaccuracies with products. A lot of times on Arcade 1Up's website and other retailers' websites, there's pictures and information about products that do not match the final product that people receive. And David did a very good job of explaining that sometimes things change in production and they can't control what happens. And sometimes it'll take months for retailers to update their pictures and images to reflect what the final product will be. And that's an awesome answer, and I hope Arcade 1Up continues to work on this and give us better descriptions and better, more accurate images of the product by the time it's done. However, I can't fully support this because I have to show you guys this. So guys, when I was getting my assets and information ready for this show, to get pictures for the thumbnail and, backdrops for the video itself, I went to the Arcade 1Up website because I wanted to go check out the Attack from Mars pinball, because we're going to talk about Arcade 1Up pinball in a second. And when I went there, I take a look at the image they have displayed of the Attack from Mars pinball table, and if you take a look, I'm going to see if I can bring it up on screen, and yeah, take a look at the DMD that's included. That's not the final product. So David yesterday said, it's hard to get retailers the most updated and accurate information, but yet here we are taking a look at a product that's been on their website for over 2 years now. That's been long rumored, long announced. They've had time to update the product, and it still doesn't have the accurate DMD that the final product has. So practice what you preach. If you do want to see updates and more accurate information going out about your products, that your images and descriptions match basically what's on the website, what people receive in the final product, maybe go back and update your Arcade 1Up pinball pictures to reflect what the product actually looks like. Another thing, I know I will bring that up later. Okay, so moving on. Travis did bring up a recent video by his good friend Mike of All Trades asking about whatever happened to Arcade 1Up pinball and what is the future of Arcade 1Up pinball. And David MacIntosh did have an opportunity to respond to say, actually, Arcade 1Up pinball was in fact not dead, and we would be getting new offerings as soon as the second half of 2023, which was very interesting. But he did talk about what complications they ran into when it comes to Arcade 1Up pinball. So I will say David was refreshingly transparent on the problems that Arcade 1Up have experienced with their Arcade 1Up pinball machines and why we haven't seen new entries over the course of the last year or any information on upcoming tables. Let's be honest, when these tables initially came out, they were slated to be targeted at a $4.99 price point, and due to supply chain issues, part shortages, other issues with the pandemic, the price quickly shot up to $9.99. When you look at the table itself, that doesn't provide a lot of value for that price point, unfortunately, especially when there are better options out there that are still cheaper, such as the At Games Legends pinball table, which arguably is a much better machine that offers a lot more options. However, one thing David is correct on, Arcade 1Up may have an edge in one capacity, and that is the titles, because their partnership with Zen Pinball has been instrumental. They, of course, get the awesome Williams licenses, and of course Star Wars and Marvel original Zen tables. Having those name brand and brand recognition is certainly helpful. But the one thing I was concerned with David talking about the pinballs is concessions they would have to make the tables at an affordable price point where they felt justified in putting them out. So it should be no surprise to you guys that I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Arcade 1Up pinball machines. I like the way they play, I like the solenoids, I like the feel and height of the machine, and I like the look of the machine. Even though it's only a 24-inch screen, the experience is fairly good. But it goes without saying that the machine is by no means perfect. While it does have superior licenses and probably superior play mechanics, there's so many things missing from this machine, such as Wi-Fi, leaderboards, even having the picture at 1080p. I mean, for God's sakes, At Games is looking at 4K pinball, and we're still talking about 720p jaggy pinball on the Arcade 1Up machines. And David is talking about having to make further concessions to make them affordable. So you're taking away a lot of specialness of the machine, such as removing the solenoids, such as maybe taking out the second screen DMD. I mean, this is a machine that already needed additional features and improvements to be successful going forward, and hearing a conversation about having to make concessions to make it affordable really doesn't give me a lot of hope for the future of Arcade 1Up pinball if this is true. So there are some other points that are a little bit less detailed that I do want to cover. One thing that David MacIntosh said that made me very happy, gave me a little bit of a tickle down in the cockles of my heart, maybe the sub-cockles, was the fact that he said Arcade 1Up understands that they need to differentiate their titles going forward, and they are looking at releasing more 80s games, including a new 80s title as early as this year, and that made me very happy because the focus has clearly been on modernizing and going for a younger audience when your core demographic, your hardcore fans, are a little bit older, and we do want to see more classic and cool arcades released, so that made me extremely happy. On top of that, we did get an update on XL and Pro, so we are getting an XL cabinet this year, maybe as early as holiday is what they're aiming for, and I'm certainly happy to hear that the XL and Pro lines aren't gone dead in the water. They certainly had a rocky start with the screen quality, but they are, in my opinion, what Arcade 1Up should have always been, and I'm excited to add more to my collection, so it's good to hear that we're getting more. Now, another thing that David did address was the Pro Cabs, and he gave some justification on maybe some initial community disappointment with the Pro Series cabinet, and they talked about how closely they are getting to a commercial product. One area where I will agree with David, and I really like it, is the fact that these cabinets are more accurate to a real arcade cabinet in the size and style. I love my XL cabinets, and I agree with them. They're somewhere around 90 to 95% the size of a real arcade. Sure, they're lighter, maybe a little bit thinner, and maybe a little bit less less depth to them coming out from the wall, but they're a really good size and really comfortable to play with. The 19-inch screen still might be a little bit small, but you're left with not very many options when it comes to LCD screens in a 4x3 or 5x4 aspect ratio above that size. Hopefully Unico finally comes out with that 26-inch Phoenix monitor and we can start having different conversations. But one thing I think I did kind of have a hard time with when he was talking about this is he said, you know, we're a hardware company that's used to making these economical pieces and putting them out. There's a certain challenge with coming up with a pro model. And I think that you have enough people involved, not necessarily working for your company, but you have people in your beta tester program, you have people that you can ask, communicate with, and get an answer. I think some of the problems that you're talking about aren't so much an experience issue. It's a business model issue where you're used to going out and outsourcing and getting the cheapest parts to come in as low as you can on budget. That doesn't really work when you're doing a pro model machine where you're looking to add pro features. This is the point where you don't cheap out, you don't skimp. If you are going to do a pro model, add the pro features and price accordingly. Otherwise, don't call it a pro. Arguably, this probably still should have been called an XL. Yes, you had Yamaha speakers. Yes, you had HAP Ultimate sticks, but even so, they're still not the gold standard for what you would offer. Gold standard and pro go hand in hand, that name recognition. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, he accidentally said MK, but he meant maybe the problem was the title with the Killer Instinct Pro Cab. Maybe they should have gone with a different Pro Cab. And he said, well, maybe if it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it would be a different story. No. Yes, Killer Instinct may have been slightly the problem, but the problem was your marketing. You would just announced a pro Killer Instinct cabinet at the exact same time, realistically, that your Killer Instinct 3/4 scale cab was just going into market. So you were basically competing against yourself. So if you ask that question, did it sell as well as it should have, or was there enough interest? It's not that there wasn't interest in the Killer Instinct Pro cabinet so much as you just tied yourself up. And then if you had done Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it would be the same issue again. Realistically, as much as people are going to hate this, maybe your first pro should have been Street Fighter if you're going to do a fighter game. Even though Street Fighter comes out every year, it's a title people would have been much more digestible with getting rid of the 3/4 scale cab and updating to a pro. Just my opinion. Of course, Mortal Kombat would have been an excellent choice as well. I don't think it was so much the title as that. The other reason that you had a problem with your pro cabinet and on the marketing is you put little to no effort into it. Like if you go to the Arcade 1UP page where I am now and you scroll down, you'll notice there is literally nothing here. There's like a couple promotional pictures that you can scroll through. That's about it. I mean, this is one of your least supported cabs you have ever put out. And I understand that your direct consumer is not really where you make your bulk of your money, so maybe you didn't put a lot into it. But look, no sizzle reel video, no real effort. So it's not like you really tried. And then last but not least, I will say one of the other issues with this cabinet, especially early on and people being fearful of it, was the screen quality. Because up until you put in the product descriptions, I don't know if it's here in the details, let's open that up. But you put here 19-inch LCD BOE screen. Thank you very much for doing that. What you have to do in your descriptions going forward is exactly that. And you have caused that issue yourself, which brings us to our next topic. So next up that I want to discuss is they actually covered screen gate. And this has to be one of the most frustrating things I've personally experienced with Arcade 1UP over the course of the last year, because you expect uniformity with a product or a brand, and we got used to having really great 17-inch 4x3 BOE monitors, and then out of nowhere we get these ads for these new legacy cabs that were coming out, plus the Golden Tee 3D and the NBA Jam Shaq Edition XL cab, and all of a sudden we're looking at the screen and saying, ooh, that doesn't look good from certain angles, ooh, that looks washed out. And that was out of nowhere. You guys replaced the screen and put in a new or what you thought was old TN monitor. And while it does have the same model number as the TN monitor you guys used before, you can see there right there on the screen how washed out Defender looks right there. I mean, even though it had the same model number as what you were using with the Gen 1, you never take a step back. And even when you did take a step back, this monitor was somehow worse because there was no real product testing. You just went off your past information. And because of that, we suffered. So David did kind of give an explanation for why they did that here, and it's the same information we kind of already heard. It's about supply chain issues. Do they move forward with products they have available if there are no BOE monitors available at that time, or do they hold off and leave people waiting? And the correct answer is, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, but I will tell you that going forward, I don't think your product should come out without some kind of notification on your product description page on what kind of monitor is there. This is a problem you have created yourself by using substandard equipment in your devices, and that's why we have to question now what kind of monitor is in the arcade. So while I think the appropriate answer is just don't use the TN monitors anymore, I mean, that would be best. There are good TN monitors, and there are some benefits to TN monitors. They apparently have better input lag for playing fighting games and other things like that, so there are benefits, but you have to make sure it has the appropriate backlighting. So I will say, if you ever have to use a TN monitor, just do some testing first and make sure there's appropriate backlighting. Don't just buy something based on past experience and a product number. You have to actually test it before you can release it to the public. That was a nightmare. Anyways, I myself am looking at replacing my MK30th cabinet. I'm probably going to end up getting your MK2 Deluxe cabinet, maybe. And here's the maybe part, because I still don't know what monitor you're putting in this cabinet. Is it going to be an upgrade to the last one, or is it going to be another shitty TN monitor? And here's how you fix it. Under your product features, you have crisp 17-inch color monitor. What the hell does crisp mean? I know it was your new buzzword that you came up with this year for CES, and buzzwords are fun, but crisp doesn't provide any information. And I've asked this question directly, and I've been told, well, we don't know for sure whether it's going to be an IPS monitor or, you know, if it's going to be a BOE monitor. BOE is a brand. IPS is a designation. So here's the thing. Just be forthcoming in your description going forward and say, and I know you're going to say, well, things change in production. Keep up on the website and make sure it's done. So in your description, instead of saying a crisp, which means nothing, LCD monitor, just say, is it a TN monitor? Is it a TFT monitor? I think that's what the designation is. It might be TFFT. I always get that one wrong. Or is it an IPS? And all an IPS is a super TFT monitor. All you have to do is basically state that. And I know you're saying, well, that's only for the hardcores. No, that will be for everybody, because you know what the average consumer does before buying a product like this? Because we're not talking about an impulse buy. You go to Walmart and see something for $30 to $100. I mean, this is a $500 to $1,000 purchase. People are going to do a little bit of research, and you know who they come to? Dummies like me that are sitting there on the internet saying, man, this screen sucks. And you know what they do? They make a decision with their wallet then to say, it has a shitty screen, I'm not going to buy it. It's certainly not worth making that investment, especially going in to a potential concession when people have even less money for expenditures that are deemed unnecessary, such as arcade cabinets. So all you have to do is in the product description, say if it's a TN, say if it's a TFT, or say if it's an IPS monitor. And if you can't do that, I don't know, just go with all BOE going forward. And if you can't get BOE, just don't release it. I don't know what to say. Anyways, I know I'm being super critical about that. It's just, I really think that this is an easy answer. You just classify what type of monitor is in the cabinet. It's a straightforward product description, and I understand things change during the supply chain. If they change, just update your website. So anyways, guys, that's my reaction to yesterday's Arcade 1Update show. While a lot of people say they felt like it was kind of fluff and you didn't get a lot of anything out of it, I personally really enjoyed the show. I enjoyed the presentation. Again, like I said, I think this is one of Arcade 1Up's best efforts from their social media output going forward. And while there was a lot of business speak, I did appreciate at least getting some kind of communication. It's refreshing to at least least get something. So I hope they continue with it. I would appreciate if they could figure out how to be even more transparent going forward and take more advice from the community. Another thing I really liked was David did talk about possibly having focus groups going forward for some assistance in helping Arcade 1-Up with mistakes they've made in the past, whether it be product or everything like that. I asked the question during the show, how can we apply to be in the focus groups? I'm serious. I want to be in this focus group. Like, obviously, I've bought like almost every Arcade 1-Up cabinet. Obviously, I'm a huge fan, and I feel like I could be helpful in just identifying what I like and what I don't like. Now, I'm not an arcade hardcore, like I don't have all the knowledge other people have, but I certainly have knowledge about the general consumer and what they would like with this, and I think that could be helpful. Anyways, I'm not going to promote myself anymore for that. I think having a focus group and working with your community is certainly a good idea. Another thing, I don't know if they'll ever get to, because it seems like the production schedule is way too close to when these machines hit retail. I do think that you need to get some factory production level machines out early to people to be beta tested. It's okay to beta test your hardware, but you got to do that. Anyways, I'm venting a little bit now. Anyways, the show I thought was very good. It was refreshing. I hope they keep doing it. And while a lot of people think there wasn't a lot of answers given, I actually got a lot out of it. And I hope that this video helps you guys get a lot out of it as well. The same thing that I got. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments. What do you think of Arcade 1Update as a show? Were you pleased with the episode? And what do you think of my thoughts on it? Do you think that most of the things I'm thinking make sense? Or do you think that I'm making assumptions that I have no business making? I'm open to constructive criticism too. Anyways, guys, thank you so very much for watching. This is Michael B. the Game Genie, and I'll talk to you next time.